So as Michael said, my name is Malike Sidibe, and I am one of the newest Nikon Ambassador, and I'm a New York City-based West African photographer. I've been doing photography for about, I think 12 years now, and it's what I love to do. I can't imagine myself doing anything else. And today, my presentation, I want to talk about the importance and benefit of being versatile in photography. For me, when I started out in photography, I was lucky enough to be mentored, like Michael said, I was lucky enough to be mentored by so many different people, which gave me the opportunity to learn different style of photography. For example, I did headshots before, and I also did event photography, anything from birthdays to parties, concert. I was exposed to all these different style of photography, and in the beginning, I didn't really know exactly where I fit in. So I just kind of take opportunities wherever I get them and just kind of learn as much as I can, which kind of helped me figure out exactly which route I want to go in and everything. Knowing multiple styles of photography offers you various advantages as a photographer. For example, it makes you more adaptable. You get to learn more technical skills and also more versatile, and as well as you grow professionally. And for example, some of the things that you learn in portraiture, for example, I love portraiture. It's one of the things that I love to do because I love working with people. When I started out as a photographer, I wanted to be a menswear designer. That's pretty much like what I wanted to do because I love fashion and I love everything that comes with it. And through that, I realized that I don't like making clothes as much as I like to style and photograph them, and that's kind of how I transitioned to becoming a photographer. And some of the things that I learned when I started out was portraiture and fashion, as well as landscape and documentary. And learning all these different skills helped me in different ways, and it gave me a lot of different opportunities in different areas, and also helped me make money as a photographer. Like, sometimes I get random assignments to be like, hey, we want you to document a protest happening, or we want to send you off with a celebrity to document, and we want you to get fashion shots. We also want you to document them in their daily life. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I did these different styles and how they help me now. And in documentary, for example, it helps you understand how to convey a message or a story that engage your viewers. For example, these images I shot during the George Floyd protest in New York in 2010. The way I came about actually shooting this, I had no experience in photojournalism. I used to just photograph people and things like that, but from my experience of doing events and all of these things came in handy when I was doing this. So a little bit backstory with these images. And 2020, when the George Floyd protest started, I kind of avoided going out to do anything. I was like, I'm going to stay home and see how this thing developed, until one of my friends forced me to watch the video of the murder of George Floyd. And I was very angry, and I was like, okay, like, as a photographer, I gotta find some ways to at least stand up for something. And that's when I grabbed my camera and went out to protest. Little did I know that that's gonna kind of shape the way I look at photography and the way I do things. So I went out to Brooklyn to the first protest they did in New York, and these are the images that I created from that. And that helped me a lot. My experience in doing events and photographing weddings helped me a lot to document this in a way that was meaningful and portrayed what was happening. Some of the other things in documentary photography, you learn how to be proficient technically. For example, this image right here was at night. It was towards the end of my night. I was ready to go home. I finished my assignment. And then I saw this guy hop on this pole with the flag that says, "I can't breathe." And it was super dark, and I tried to shoot it with the flash on, and I didn't really like how it looked. Like, you saw what was happening, but I was like, I needed to play with it a little bit. So I ended up shooting without the flash, really dark. But knowing how to work my camera helped me still get some details out of the shots, and this is what the image that I made. This one actually ended up being on the cover of New York Times Magazine in June 2020. And in documentary photography, you also develop the ability to anticipate and just kind of observe and almost predict what's about to happen, which is very important. And I feel like it was a skill that I was able to develop when I was doing weddings. And has any of you guys shot weddings before? Yeah, as you guys know, it's one of the most stressful jobs as a photographer. You got to make sure you capture the important moments, like the first kiss, like the groom putting on the ring on the bride, and these things are like after you get it, it comes to you naturally. You already know where to stand to get those shots, and you know how to how to work your camera to get those settings so you get the best shot. Because if you miss it, you might not get it again, and at a wedding, that could be a very, very bad thing. So this image was one of the first images I shot as well when I was documenting that. As you see, it's the police car with fireworks blowing out of it. And as I was walking, I saw these kids trying to flip over the police car, and I was taking images, and I was like, well, I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. They weren't able to flip the car, but then I saw this other guy with something in his hands, and I kind of didn't know what he had in his hand, but I was like, okay, this is something is about to go down. As he was running toward the car, I walked around to see where was the best angle for me to capture the shot. He ended up going on the other side, and because he was moving quickly, I was like, oh shoot. But as soon as I realized he had fireworks in his hand, I knew there was some sort of explosion that was happening. I was able to anticipate and observe and almost kind of predict how the image is going to look. So I positioned myself in a place where I felt comfortable and safe and captured these images. As you can see, this kind of happened in a split second. If you miss it, you miss it. And it's one of my favorite images that I created during that, as well as this image. This image was actually in the top 3 images of 2020 on Time Magazine, and it's one of the images. It also was up for auctions at Christie's, and same kind of situation. You kind of have to predict what's happening. This was in front of Barclays Center. Anybody is familiar with Barclays Center in Brooklyn? And this is where I took that. I saw this kid arguing with the cops because he was standing on the street, and they were asking him to get off the street because, you know, he was protesting and things like that. And the kid, I think he was probably like 15 or 16 years old, maybe 17. And it was amazing to me to see how many cops was rushing over to him. I already kind of saw what was about to happen. So same thing, I positioned myself in a place that I thought, okay, I will be safe here. I won't get hit or arrested. And I almost anticipated. I took many shots as it was happening. You kind of see the story as it developed. And I saw about almost 10 police officers tackling this kid just because he was protesting. The one thing that I find very interesting about this image is if you look closely on his t-shirt, it says that please stop the violence. So that was very interesting to me as I was taking this photo, because he's out there fighting for something that he wants to stop and ended up finding himself in that same situation, which is ironic. And fashion photography, you learn a lot of different technical skills. Like, for example, you develop new lighting techniques and learn different setups. And any of you guys do fashion? No? As you know, fashion changes all the time. There's new styles of photography. There's new ways to always like portray or tell a story of an outfit or anything you want to do. And in fashion, it's important that you learn how to set up lighting. Like this image right here, I collaborated with a friend of mine who I went to Parsons with. She's an amazing fashion designer, and she made these dress that was very interesting, and she wanted me to capture them in a way that she hasn't seen before. We wanted to kind of almost approaching it as if it was like an abstract project. And I set up my lights, and this is actually a slow shutter speed image. That's how you were able to capture the movement and the lights and the colors and all the little details that's in the image. So it's very important to learn these skills if you want to be a fashion photographer. And these are some more images from my fashion work, just to kind of show you how I'm able to use lighting to tell different stories. And in fashion photography, you develop a natural instinct for styling and fashion trends. You know, like the fashion is changing, especially nowadays. The trends are changing, and when you're in the industry of fashion, there's no way. You have to, you naturally kind of adapt and know what's going on and what people like and things like that, which comes in handy depending on the different projects you did. This was actually an image that I did for the Nikon Z6 II campaign. I think this was 2021 when they came out. They asked me, they're like, hey, we love your work. We want you to create some images for us. And I love creating this image. And portraiture, you learn different techniques that are very important. For example, posing and directing your subjects. It's very crucial when you're doing portrait photography because shooting your subject straight on could tell you a different story than it is from shooting from below or shooting from above. So it's very important to learn these different skills when you're doing portraiture. And these are some of the images that I created in the past that I think all of this is going to make sense soon as I'm bringing it back together. Understanding of light. In portrait photography, it's very important to learn how to use the light to convey a story or like document someone. This is the image that I did recently for Washington Post. This is Coleman Domingo. He's an amazing actor. He was in The New Color Purple. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the show, but he was one of the main characters in there. And the day that we actually shot this photo, he got nominated for the Golden Globe Award. So he was in a really good mood, so like the shoot went really well. And this is one of the images from that. When I first started out, the way I kind of switched over from wanting to be a fashion photographer, wanted to be a fashion designer to photography. Once I bought my camera, after like experimenting a lot, I got a little bit bored and I wanted to do something new that I've never done before. So I started going out there with my camera and started creating landscape images. And these are some of my earliest work that I created. I didn't put a lot of landscape photography in here because I couldn't find my hard drive that had all my older work, but you get the idea. One of the things that you learn in landscape photography, you learn, you become environmental aware. Like you learn, like when you're photographing someone, you're not just thinking about how they look, how you lit them, but you're also thinking about where you place them and how it makes sense to the scenery to get your ideas out. And it teaches you how to scout and plan a shoot because you could go to this location at 3 p.m. and compared to golden hour, it's gonna look totally different. So being aware of your environment comes in handy as a photographer. So now, how does all of these skills and style of photography helps you becomes a better photographer? I want to show you guys this image that this story that I did for the New York Times. I got to photograph Usher for the New York Times Magazine in the beginning of last year. It was a very interesting assignment because I've worked with the New York Times a lot, and every time they come to me, they have a little bit of different story they want me to tell. But this one, the thing that made it very interesting is that they wanted me to spend 10 days with Usher. You guys know Usher, right? Okay, cool. And they wanted me to spend 10 days with him. They wanted me to document everything he was doing in the 10 days because he had a residency in Las Vegas, and they wanted to tell a story of what he's doing and how he prepares for that. So they sent me out to LA to meet him, and we started out. I started out documenting him where he was rehearsing and him and his dancers, and this is one of the first images I created. As I got there, I'm going to tell you guys a funny story. As a photographer, for me, one of the things that I'm really proud of, I'm really good at making people feel comfortable when it comes to photographing them. I'm able to, when I have 30 minutes or 5 hours with a client, I'm able to make them feel comfortable and make them trust me. And the way I was able to do that with Usher was, as soon as I got there, we were looking around. We didn't know where to go. We couldn't find his PR team, and we were looking for him. And I just saw this black Range Rover pull up to the front, and I was like, oh, what if that's him? And it just so happened to be him stepping out of the car. He just walked up to like, hi, guys. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, I didn't know he knew of me or my work. He was like, you're Malike, right? He was like, I was looking at your work. I really like your work. I'm glad that you're here to photograph me. That already made me comfortable because I was nervous. And I didn't even know the first thing to say to him. And the way he approached me, I didn't know how it was going to be. And if you know, working with celebrities could be very challenging depending on their mood that day. Some days they wake up feeling very not friendly, and some days they're very excited, and some days they're just blank. So that was very comforting for me. And then I started tagging along. I saw he had these shoes on, and these shoes are Rick Owens shoes. They don't normally come like that. And I was wondering how he made those shoes to be able to roller skate in them. So I started asking him about that, something that's totally different from my assignment. I was like, how did you come about making them? He's like, he actually made them himself. He customized his shoes and put the rollerblades in there and started working. So we were naturally starting the conversation and talking. And all of these skills come in play because when I was doing portrait photography, I had to learn what to talk about to make my subjects feel comfortable. And I had to ask them some questions that had nothing to do with the assignment to make them forget that I'm there to document every little thing that they did. And so I started tagging along. I started documenting him and like him rehearsing. This was him and his team. As you can see, the energy is very exciting. Like you kind of almost have to, for an assignment like this, you almost have to learn how to blend in, how to be one of them. And I had 10 days with him, so it eventually became as if I was one of his team. And I made friends with his backup dancers and his team, and everybody started becoming comfortable with me. And this image, I wanted to also talk about the technical aspect of it. As you see, they were rehearsing. I could have just put on my flash and freeze the action and take the shot, but I wanted to kind of show this sense of movement and to show that they were dancing. So I made my shutter speed a bit slower than I had it to just kind of catch this sense of movement. As you see, like you see the blurriness go through some of the images and stuff, and it looked really nice. It helped me tell my story. And same thing with this, like being aware of my environment and what was happening, and the backup dancers as they were rehearsing, and paying attention to him because he was my main subject. So I kind of framed it in a way where I could get this image. So I had to learn how to be patient, observe, and also anticipate what they were doing, and created these images. And this is him dancing with one of his backup dancers, and this image of him singing, rehearsing. As you can see, even though my assignment was to document him, I also focused on everybody around him because that's what makes up his team. The people around him, the setups, all the little tools that they're using. So like in a shot like this, especially, they wanted me to kind of approach it as if it was a documentary assignment, but also have a little fashion sense to it and be creative with my shots. And so his day-to-day, he wasn't an easy person to photograph, although he was very nice and very outgoing and super friendly. He had long hours. Like I would meet up with him at his house at like 8 a.m. in the morning, or sometime 9 or 10 a.m. And I would stay with him sometime up until 3 a.m. because he goes rehearsing, vocal lessons, and put his kids to bed, and also like at night he goes into the studio and start recording, which was amazing. And I didn't want to miss any second of it because this is Usher. Like I wanted to see his process and like how he recorded all the amazing hits that he did and everything. And so when we were in the studio, you could already see he was already tired. And like, I don't know if any of you guys have been in the music studio, but it tends to be really dark in there. So you have to use flash to get the images. And for someone that's been working all day, I didn't want to keep putting on flash on his face and, you know, make him feel weird or uncomfortable. So I had to think of creative ways to document that. So knowing how, like being good at technically using my camera, I was able to set the settings to still tell my story, but in a way that didn't bother him as a subject. And then I shot this on my day 3. By this time, I'm already comfortable with him. I've talked to him. I've gotten to know his kids, his family, and I became one of them. It got to the point where he would text me and be like, hey, did you eat? Or like, you know, if you want me to do anything, don't be afraid to ask, and things like that. So I became almost one of them, which is really important because when you're on an assignment like this, you're not just there to document them. You got to make sure that they trust you. You got to make sure that they feel comfortable with you. And I feel like by this day, I was already able to break those barriers and things like that. And this is where all my technical skills and everything that I learned from fashion, documentary, portrait photography came into play. For example, this one, as I was photographing him, I actually, if I remember right, there was a mirror across of him. And I made him look at the mirror and started positioning myself and take this photo. I could have shot this image many different ways, but this angle helped me tell the story and help convey that he's at his home by including the vase and like the flowers in there and him sitting comfortably on his couch. And also him playing with his dog. They gave me amazing access to the point where it's like, when he was going to put his kids to bed, he called me over to get in the car. Because every day when he's rehearsing at 7 p.m., he drops everything. He literally just walks out and then disappears for like an hour. And the first day happened, I was like, oh, where did he go? What happened? The second day happened. So the third day, I asked him, I was like, every day at 7 p.m. you disappear. Where do you go? He's like, oh, I go put my kids to bed. Because to him, that's one of the most important things as an artist and him being who he is. So I asked him, I was like, is it okay if next time I go with you? He's like, sure, because telling that story is also as important as photographing him on stage and rehearsing. And I didn't put those images here because the magazine didn't use it, and I also feel like it's very personal. But this is his kids, him having fun with them and hanging out. And by this point, like I said, I was already comfortable with everyone around him, so I felt like it felt part of it. His kids was coming up to me, asking me questions and things like that. And this image actually is one of my favorite ones because his son took his first step as I was taking the photo. And having shared that special moment with them brought us even closer, and he loved that image. As soon as he saw it, he was like, I need a print of this. And I was like, say no more, I'll make sure you get that. And this is it. Like, I spent almost all day with them, just hanging out at their house, grabbing breakfast, dinner together, and just being one of them. And it felt really great because I had never had that much access to a celebrity like that before. Every night when I go back to my hotel, I'll file the images and send it to the magazine. And they couldn't believe how much access I had. And they were just asking me, like, how were you able to get this access? Like, are you sure they're okay with us using these images? Like, this is what we wanted. Like, you gave us more than we wanted. So things were going very smooth. And then after that, I asked him, I was like, okay, we've gotten all of these different style of images. I wanted to get something fun. I wanted to show him as an artist being cool. He had like these disco chairs, which are really nice, but they're very uncomfortable to sit in, I would say that. So we started playing around. As you can see the images, I was able to make him laugh and make him do things that people are usually afraid to ask their subjects to do. Like, you gotta be able to direct them, ask them to do things, and also letting them know that even though you're here to photograph them, you guys are collaborating together to create something new. And once a subject realizes that, they forget all the things that come with it. Like me, naturally, I hate being in front of the camera. So I know how it feels when you get a camera pointed at you. So knowing how to direct your subjects and make them do that is very important. And these were all shot in the same day, the third day. And as I was shooting, I was looking back at my images. I was like, okay, I need more. I need to push it a little bit. So my portraiture skills kicked in, and my lighting skills kicked in, and I was able to direct him. It wasn't too bright in his house, but it was bright enough to be able to kind of light the whole room. So I changed the settings into my camera, and I put him next to a lamp. I was just like, just be there for a second, observe your kids playing, hang out. I'm gonna just place myself and get different portraits of you. So I played around with that a little bit, and this was one of the images that I came out with. And I love this image because it just shows the outline of his face. It shows that he's focused. It shows that he's working towards something. And it wasn't long after that he's going to be performing at the Super Bowl this year, which is very exciting. So after we did all of those shots, I wanted to take him out. I wanted to show his environment a little bit, which is where my landscape skills came in. I put him outside on his balcony as I was on the first floor, photographing him from above, showing a little bit of the environment. This image is actually wider, but for the sake of the presentation, I cropped it in. But I got to get different images of him. As you could see, we went from being playful, him rehearsing, and now him like being himself and just quiet and serious a little bit. And I was like, okay, cool, now we gotta get something else that we haven't gotten throughout the whole few days that I was there with him. So this was, I think, about 8 p.m. in LA. And if you guys are aware, in February in LA, at 8 p.m. it gets very cold. So I had this crazy thought that came into my mind, and I was even afraid to ask him to do it. I was like, hey, can I get you jumping into the pool so we could get this playful image? He was like, hell no, I'm not doing it, and started laughing. And his PR, his publicist came around. He's like, no, he got a show tomorrow. We don't want to get him sick or anything. And I was like, okay, no problem, like no problem. And then I just see him turn around. He's like, okay, I'm gonna give you one shot, and you better catch the shot. So I had my assistant with my off-camera softbox. I told him where to stand, take some test shots to make sure everything looks good. And he did one dive. And this was it. And I shot all of this within split seconds away from each other. And the technical skills that come into here is like understanding your lighting, understanding where to place your subject, because I could have placed him anywhere. I could have been on the side here photographing him with this other side showing. I placed myself somewhere where I could capture to show the pool, show him jumping, and show his form as well. And that's how we were able to create this. And as he was in the water, I took advantage of it even more. I pushed. I was like, "Can you stay there? Can we get more?" And just directing him, talking to him, and feeling confident in what I'm doing. And all of that comes into play as you're photographing him. And we got some amazing shots, as you can see. The magazine was very happy, and as a photographer, that made me so happy. So the energy just kept building on. They were so happy to the point where they invited me to fly with them in their private jet. And not everybody gets to fly in a private jet, and not everybody gets to say that their first private jet experience was with Usher. So this was like a very special moment for me. I've always dreamed of flying in a private plane and not having to show my passport to get into the plane and none of that. So this was one of my favorite parts of this. But same thing, it was kind of important to show his environment, what's happening. And if you look at this image with no context, you know that he's a celebrity because there's a guy behind him with the bags, and he's holding a very expensive bag, and there's a lady welcoming him into the thing. So telling all these stories and showing all of these in your work is very important. And this was when we got to Vegas. We were already at the place that he was going to perform at. So I started getting images of him doing voice lessons. Believe it or not, this is him doing voice lessons. As he was doing all this exercise, he was singing different notes and things like that, which I had never seen before. And I noticed that he likes to bring different candles and humidifiers, and that had like a specific sense into his dressing room and set the environment. As soon as you walk in there, it's like a breath of fresh air. And I was one of the only people that was allowed to go into his dressing room at any given time, which was really great because even his personal photographer, like, "Oh, I don't think you should go there," and things like that. And I'll just go right in, and they will let me. And this was when we went on stage. He started rehearsing. I wanted to show how the environment looked and how things was looking. So I started playing around with my camera settings again, and then also being aware of the landscape of the space and finding a way to create those images that portray where he's at, what he's doing, and who he is. And this was one of the images I created. And before the show, even if it's rehearsal, any show, they pray together. They all gather as a group right in front of the stage and start praying. And as a photographer, it's really important to know how to portray all these little things into that. So instead of kind of getting a wide shot of all of them looking down, that kind of could be weird. You're seeing people's back and things like that. I decided to be part of the group. So I just kind of scoot down and then have my camera up and started documenting that. And you see all his team and you see how serious and like you see this sense of togetherness with them together, which was how I felt. I felt like I was part of them, and I saw how much they cared about each other and how interactive they were and things like that. And this was when he started performing. If you've ever shot a concert, things change all the time. The lights is changing, the colors are changing, the brightness of the set changes as you go along. And as a photographer, it's important to know how to work your camera and how to think in your fit and make those adjustments as you go. So this is where my technical skills also came into play. I was able to adapt and then be more versatile in the images that I was creating and placing myself in a position where I'm able to get the best angles and things like that. So I got to create all these images. I photographed his performance 3 nights in a row. So on the first night, I was close to the stage, getting all those closer shots and things like that, and backstage, and then kind of noticing where he went during his performances, because you don't get to see that and the rehearsal, and nobody tells you. So I was able to anticipate and place myself every day in different positions that would help me create a different image. And this is how it's my creative side kicked in. I had this filter that I was able to put on my lens to kind of create this sparkling vibe that kind of gives a surrealism feeling to the images, which was really nice. And the magazine loved that even more. So, and same thing, like the lighting, changed a little bit more, but it was still bright enough to see how everything looks in the background. I was able to adjust everything to get my perfect shot and everything. And this image was that because this was supposed to be a cover story until they found out that he moved his album to this year because he's performing at the Super Bowl. So it ended up being an inside story, but this would have been the cover. The editor told me that. But that's my presentation, guys. I think it's very important to be versatile, and some of the styles that I would recommend for you guys to learn how to do the basic of portraiture, landscape, and fashion, because once you have a little bit of all these things, it will come in handy, and you could use it to make money as a photographer. But thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'm here. I'm almost out of time, but thank you.